I landed in Los Angeles around noon, stepping off the plane with a carry-on in one hand and a hopeful buzz in my chest. Lindsay didn't know I was coming. Or at least, she wasn't supposed to. I'd coordinated with one of her assistants to keep it under wraps, just show up, surprise her, support her while she presented the Women in Media Trailblazer Award at the annual Vista Media Festival. I imagined her spotting me in the crowd, her face lighting up, arms flinging around my neck in that way she used to. We'd laugh about how I always found a way to show up for her, even when it didn't make sense logistically. But that's not how it played out. The moment I arrived at the Westland Grand, the hotel hosting the event, I felt something was off. It was in the way people looked at me, recognition without warmth. A few gave me that tight, polite smile that said I know who you are, but I'm not sure I should say anything. Others glanced over me entirely like I wasn't supposed to be there. I brushed it off. This wasn't my world. I wasn't in media. I wasn't on red carpets or in those little black and white profile spreads in digital magazines. I was the guy behind the curtain, the one who made sure bills were paid on time, who reminded her when her passport was expiring, who made her chamomile tea when her voice was sh*t from rehearsing a pitch or recording a segment. I finally saw her just past the banquet hall entrance, lit from behind by the soft golden sconces lining the hallway. She looked stunning. Her hair was swept up and she wore a deep navy jumpsuit with an open back, understated but confident, exactly her style. She laughed at something someone said, tipping her head back like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all night. She hadn't noticed me yet. I stepped forward, about to call her name, when her hand fell gently onto a man's arm. I paused. The guy turned slightly, giving me a partial view of his face, slicked back hair, a tailored suit, that unmistakable big city media polish. He was saying something close to her ear. She grinned, fingers curling briefly around his forearm. I didn't know his name then. I'd learn it later. Chad. Chad from New York. The guy who hosted that syndicated morning show with the high production budget and the perfectly lit rooftop segments. I stood there quietly, waiting to see when she'd acknowledge me. 5 minutes passed. 10. Eventually, one of the event organizers found me and ushered me inside, giving me a backstage pass and a half-hearted "thanks for coming out." I smiled, still holding on to the hope that Lindsay just hadn't seen me, that this was all part of the chaos of the evening. The award ceremony began promptly at 8. When Lindsay finally took the stage, I felt a flicker of pride again. No matter what had changed between us in recent months, her late nights, the emotional distance, the way she always seemed glued to her phone, I still believed in her talent, her intelligence, her drive. She smiled into the microphone, confident and composed. And before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank a few people. First, my incredible team, my agent, the sponsors who keep the lights on. She chuckled lightly, eliciting polite laughter from the audience. And lastly, a dear family friend who flew in tonight to show his support. Brandon, thank you for being here. I blinked. Family friend? A few heads turned toward me. I smiled, nodding stiffly as cameras briefly panned in my direction. I felt my ears go hot. My throat tightened around the sip of champagne I'd just taken. Family friend. She didn't even say husband. Not even partner. No acknowledgement of 10 years together. No hint of shared history. Just a polite nod to a presence in the audience that could have been anybody. After her speech, she exited stage left and went right back to Chad. I watched from across the room as her body turned toward him instinctively, almost magnetically. Her hand lingered on his shoulder, her laugh rang louder than seemed necessary, and she playfully nudged him when he made some snide joke I couldn't hear. There was no sign she was even aware I was there. And if she was, she certainly wasn't showing it. I moved through the crowd slowly, blending into the background. I must have looked out of place, the only guy not air-kissing anyone, not talking shop, not pitching a project or complimenting someone's podcast numbers. I took a seat at the edge of the banquet area and let the conversation swirl around me like static. At some point, someone I vaguely recognized, maybe from a holiday party years ago, sat next to me and asked, "So, how do you know Lindsay?" I stared at them. "Sorry?" I asked. "How do you two know each other? You're not in production, are you?" I gave a tight smile. "We've known each other a long time." They nodded vaguely and excused themselves a minute later. It hit me like a slow drip. I wasn't just invisible. I'd been erased. The realization didn't come in a flash. It crawled in, settled in my chest like a quiet weight. Every little strange moment from the last 6 months began slotting into place. The way Lindsay started referring to things as hers instead of ours. The calls she always took outside. The trips she said she needed to take alone. The new passwords on everything. I sipped my drink and kept my expression neutral, but inside, something was beginning to unravel. At one point, she made her way toward our side of the room, maybe heading to the green room, maybe just weaving through the crowd. Her eyes slid over me, landed, paused. I gave a small nod. She smiled. Not warm. Not an asterisk, mate. Just polite. Like I was someone who had brought her dry cleaning. She passed without stopping. I couldn't sleep that night. Back at the hotel, our suite, technically, though it didn't feel like anything belonged to us anymore, I lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, fully dressed. The air conditioning rattled like an old bus engine, and the city lights bled through the curtains in stripes across the room. The champagne still buzzed faintly in my system, but it wasn't enough to numb the growing storm in my chest. Lindsay came in late. Very late. I didn't hear her right away. The sound of the door unlocking barely registered until I noticed the hallway light creeping across the floor. She entered quietly, her heels in one hand, holding them like she'd snuck back in from someone else's life. I stayed still, pretending to be asleep. She walked past me into the bathroom, the soft glow of the vanity lights spilling out as she left the door ajar. I heard the water run. A few minutes passed. Then silence. Then the rustle of something, a bag maybe, and the soft snap of a compact mirror. I turned my head just slightly and saw her profile in the mirror. She was reapplying lipstick. A different shade than earlier that evening. Lighter. Glossier. Her makeup had that uneven look, smudged eyeliner, faint pink flush on her cheeks, hair a little too out of place for someone who'd just been mingling. She looked used. And not in the way someone would after a long night of networking. When she turned out the light and climbed into bed, she didn't say a word. Not even a tired hey. Just laid there, rigid as a plank, facing away from me. I didn't speak either. But I didn't sleep. I laid there in the dark, heart ticking like a slow bomb, trying to piece together what the hell was going on. And the worst part? It wasn't just this one night. The signs had been there for months, breadcrumbs I had ignored, hoping they led to nothing. Hoping I was just paranoid. But tonight gave me something I couldn't unsee. And fate handed me something else too. The next morning, Lindsay was already gone when I woke up. A post-it note rested on the nightstand. Early meetings. See you later? Red heart. There was no room number or schedule. No suggestion of where she might be. Just vague affection scribbled in red ink, likely the same pen she used to underline her talking points on stage. I got up slowly, still in yesterday's clothes, and sat on the edge of the bed. The room looked pristine again, cleaned by hotel staff except for one thing. A linen napkin on the floor near the desk. I might have missed it if the corner hadn't peeked out from under the wheel of my suitcase. I picked it up, assuming it was nothing. But there was handwriting on it. A room number. Neat cursive. Black ink. Suite 627, Sunset Palms. No context. No name. Just that. I held the napkin in my hand for a long time. It felt like holding evidence. Cold, delicate, damning. I thought about all the things she hadn't said last night. About how she barely looked at me during the festival. About the light in her eyes when she leaned toward Chad. About how she had looked in that mirror fixing herself for someone who wasn't me. I folded the napkin and slipped it into my wallet. Later that day, we were supposed to fly home together. But Lindsay texted me around noon saying she had back-to-back wrap-ups and would take a later flight. She said not to worry, that we'd catch up at home. I didn't respond. Instead, I boarded the plane alone, sat in the window seat of 14A and stared at the cloudless sky while turbulence jostled the cabin. I kept replaying everything. The way her tone had shifted recently. How she'd started calling me B again, something she only did when she wanted to sound familiar without being an asterisk mate. Like I was a pet, not a partner. And I remembered how she used to be so transparent, texting me updates, sending selfies from her dressing room, tagging me in behind-the-scenes photos. But now? Radio silence. Every photo she posted was curated, as she called it. Filtered. No trace of me. Back home in Pasadena, I let myself into our place with the key code, though I already knew it wouldn't be long before that code meant nothing to her. I dropped my bag in the foyer, glanced around at the picture frames still lining the entryway. Most were of her. Some were of us. All suddenly felt like museum pieces, echoes of a story no one was telling anymore. I expected her to return by evening. She didn't. Instead, I heard the front door unlock around 2 a.m. She stepped in carrying her smaller luggage, the sleek black one she usually took for overnight shoots. She moved through the house like a tenant. No greeting. No, I missed you. Just a quiet beeline to the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the island, watching the light from her phone cast patterns against the hallway wall. She closed the door behind her. I heard the click of the lock. That was new. She never used to lock that door. I didn't knock. Didn't say a word. I just stood there, alone in the dim kitchen light, realizing something terrifyingly simple. She wasn't hiding anymore. Whatever this was, this lie she was living, it had gone beyond secrecy. It had moved into a new phase. One where I was no longer a part of the story. Just an obstacle. A placeholder. A name on a lease. I slept on the couch that night. In the morning, she was already gone again. A fresh post-it note on the counter, work stuff all day. Don't wait up. Next to it was a half-used lipstick tube. Not the one she wore on stage. Not the one she wore when she climbed into bed beside me after the festival. A third one. A color I'd never seen her wear before. I picked it up and stared at it like it might speak. But it just sat there quiet and accusing. Later that day, I remembered something else. A moment, maybe a year ago, when Lindsay had asked me to help her set up a backup drive. We had synced her old MacBook to a cloud account for autosaving projects. She had said she'd never use it again but couldn't bear to throw it away. I still had that laptop. It was in the home office collecting dust under a stack of unused notebooks. And suddenly, I wanted to know if it still remembered her better than I did. I didn't touch the laptop right away. For the rest of the day, I moved through the house like I was trespassing in my own life. I watered the plants Lindsay always forgot about. Took out the recycling. Stared at a half-empty bottle of Pinot Noir on the kitchen counter and tried to remember if it had been there before she left for LA or if it was new, opened during one of the nights I wasn't invited to share. At around 11 p.m. I finally sat down at the desk in the guest room, technically her creative corner, though she hadn't used it in months. Dust clung to the edges of the screen, the mouse pad felt gummy, and the power button resisted my first press like it didn't want to wake up either. But it booted. I entered the old password. Still worked. The desktop was a mess, folders with vague labels like miscellaneous, final_real, and 2022 stuff. There was one labeled archived_audio that caught my eye, but I ignored it at first. I didn't want to make assumptions. Instead, I started with the synced cloud folder. It took a few seconds to populate. Then it hit me like an invisible hand wrapped around my throat. The first thing I saw was a thumbnail of a photo, Lindsay in a hotel room, clearly not a professional shoot. She was kneeling on a king-sized bed in a black tank top, smiling into the camera with that playful, dangerous smirk, the one I hadn't seen in months. She looked happy. Alive. And nothing about her expression looked like it was meant for me. I clicked. It wasn't just one photo. It was a whole sequence, some in selfie mode, others clearly taken by someone else. Same hotel room. Same warm lighting. Same set of soft white sheets that definitely weren't from our house. There was a man's arm in one photo. Just an arm. Tanned. Veiny. Expensive-looking watch. And even though the face was out of frame, I felt certain. I scrolled further. There were more photos. Her on a balcony wearing nothing but his jacket. Her holding a wine glass curled up against someone off-screen. In some, she was smiling with her eyes in a way she hadn't around me in a long time. In others, her expression was almost cruel, like she knew she was betraying someone and didn't care. I sat back in the chair, breathing shallowly, eyes stinging. For a long moment, I did nothing. I just let the glow of the screen wash over me, letting the weight of the truth settle in the air like smoke after a fire. And then, because I couldn't help myself, I opened the audio folder. There were dozens of voice memos. Some were labeled by date. Others were just titled things like practice_pitch or draft_3. But one was called recording_for_me. It was timestamped a week before the festival. I clicked play. Lindsay's voice filled the room, confident, calm, and unfiltered. I know I should feel bad, but I don't. Not really. Brandon's a good guy. Dependable. Sweet. But that's the problem, isn't it? He's just predictable. He doesn't challenge me. I feel like I'm dragging a rock around sometimes. She laughed. God, that sounds awful. But it's true. I can't breathe around him anymore. Everything feels like a checklist. Like we're playing house and I'm the only one who knows it's fake. Another pause. A sigh. I know I'm not being fair. But I'm not going to apologize for wanting more. I closed the file. My hand was shaking. I wasn't sure what hurt more, her sleeping with someone else or the casual dismissal in her voice, like I was just some phase she'd outgrown. I opened another file. This one was shorter. Chat says I light up when I talk about things that matter to me. I think that's why I like him. He makes me feel seen. Not like I'm someone's wife or someone's backup plan. I'm just me. I clicked through 3 more recordings, each one slicing into me sharper than the last. Fragments of her voice replayed in my head. He'd never leave me. That's the sad part. Sometimes I wish he'd get angry just once. But he never does. He's easy to keep around. That's dangerous in its own way. By the time I stopped listening, I felt hollow. It was more than cheating. This wasn't a single reckless night or a temporary escape. This was a choice. A sustained, methodical deception. A different life she'd been living on parallel tracks. And I'd been too blind or too trusting to notice. I spent the next hour downloading every file. Photos, audio, PDFs, *TS of her text backups synced accidentally through a messaging app tied to her Apple ID. Flirty messages. Coordinated hotel visits. Plans to reschedule things with me to make room for him. One conversation stood out. Chad, does he suspect anything? Lindsay, if he does, he's too polite to say anything. That's the thing, Brandon never wants to rock the boat. That's why I keep getting away with it. That stung worse than anything else. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being mocked for my restraint. For not shouting. For not accusing. For loving her quietly. I backed up the evidence twice, once on a password-protected USB drive and again to an encrypted online folder. I wasn't sure why. Maybe a part of me still wanted to give her the chance to explain. Maybe I wanted to know that I wasn't crazy. That this was real. Tangible. When I closed the laptop, the house felt colder. I left the room, walked to our shared bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same. But something was different now. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared like I was meeting myself again for the first time in years. Then I walked into the bedroom, sat on the edge of our bed, and picked up her copy of The Artist's Way, the one with the dog-eared pages and her notes in the margins. Inside, I found a receipt dated 6 weeks ago from the Sunset Palms. 1 king suite, 2 guests. I placed it next to her pillow. Let it wait for her. Let her see what I knew without saying a word. Because this wasn't going to end in a fight. This was going to end on my terms. The morning after I found the recordings, I didn't say anything. Lindsay came through the front door a little after 7, dressed in a black blazer and charcoal slacks, her makeup fresh, her eyes alert. She was sipping from one of those compostable cups from the corner cafe, the one I used to bring her coffee from every Friday when I still thought small rituals meant something. She froze when she saw me standing in the kitchen. Didn't expect you to be up this early, she said with a half smile, setting her keys down. I've been up a while, I replied. My voice was steady. Detached. Like I was narrating someone else's life. She didn't notice the USB drive sitting on the table or the empty space on the bookshelf where her framed Columbia Award had once stood. I'd boxed it up, along with a few other things that had started to feel like props in a play I wasn't cast in anymore. Everything okay? She asked, watching me too carefully. I nodded once. Just thinking about money stuff. I might move some things around today. Oh. She tilted her head too casual. I gave her a faint smile. Yeah. Want to make sure we're set up right, just in case. The way she blinked told me she understood, even if she didn't want to acknowledge it yet. I didn't ask where she had been. I didn't confront her. Because I had already begged and something better. Retaliation, when done right, doesn't look like revenge. It looks like control. The first step was the accounts. We had shared several: checking, savings, 2 investment portfolios, and a real estate fund that I had handled from day one. Lindsay liked to call herself hands-off, which was a nice way of saying she trusted me to deal with the boring parts. And I had diligently for years. So she didn't notice when I logged in that afternoon and started withdrawing from our joint investment account. I funneled everything into a new personal checking account at a different bank under my name only. I updated the routing numbers on auto transfers. Then I removed her access from the dashboard. She'd never get the notification. She had opted out of them months ago. By noon, I'd sold my stake in our boutique home renovation business. A side venture we co-invested in 2 years back. My shares had matured. I emailed my lawyer, asking him to draft a letter revoking her managerial access. Step by step. The second thing I did was change the locks on the house. Not the front door. She'd noticed that. I started with the digital keypad on the garage and the code to the backyard gate. Then the security system login. I scheduled a locksmith to rekey the side entrance, quietly, without drama. I told him it was a matter of privacy. He didn't ask questions. The next was our cloud storage. We used it for backing up receipts, tax files, contracts. She still had access through a shared folder. I revoked it, re-uploaded the files to a new drive, made sure every digital trail had my name on it, not hers. By the end of the day, it was like slowly removing her fingerprints from a crime scene she didn't know she'd committed in broad daylight. That night, she came home earlier than usual. I was in the living room, reading, not pretending to, actually reading, when she came in carrying Thai food in a brown paper bag. "Got your favorite," she said with that practiced smile. "Green curry, extra spice." I looked up and gave a small nod. "Thanks." She set it down on the counter and began unpacking it, humming under her breath like she hadn't spent the last 6 months crafting an alternate life behind my back. As she pulled out the takeout containers, she froze. There, sitting on the marble countertop next to the fridge, was the folded receipt from the Sunset Palms, the one I had found tucked inside her book. She stared at it for a full 10 seconds before turning toward me. "You went through my things?" "No," I said. "Your things fell into mine." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't what it looks like." I didn't respond, because we weren't arguing. We weren't fighting. Fighting implies investment. This wasn't that. This was theater, and I was pulling the curtain shut in real time. That night, she slept in the guest room. I knew because I watched the security footage from my laptop, the same system she didn't know I'd upgraded months ago. The next morning, she left early again. Only this time, when she returned, suitcase in hand, her heels scuffing against the driveway, she couldn't get in. Her garage opener didn't work. The key code to the gate failed. She tried the front door. Nothing. She banged on it once. Then again. Then harder, the thud of her palm echoing against the frame. I watched from the upstairs hallway, silent. "Brandon!" she screamed through the intercom. "What the hell?" I pressed the audio button. "This isn't your home anymore." Her voice broke, just a little. "You can't do this." "I already did." There was a long silence. I could see her through the Ring camera. Lips pursed, eyes darting left and right like maybe she'd hallucinated the last few weeks, like she could reset it all with enough force. She kicked the door once, then stopped herself. And then, just like that, she turned and walked away. She didn't take the suitcase. I watched her get into a rideshare, her figure shrinking in the distance. After she left, I texted my lawyer. Sent him everything, *TS of the synced photos, audio transcriptions, even a time-stamped log of hotel stays that aligned with events she claimed to attend alone. "I want a clean divorce," I wrote. "Zero assets. No negotiations." His reply came back quickly. "With this, she doesn't stand a chance. I'll get the paperwork ready." It was only then, alone in the quiet, the smell of untouched green curry still lingering in the kitchen, that I felt something shift. Not closure. Not yet. But gravity. The feeling that, for once, I was no longer orbiting her. There's something oddly quiet about watching someone's empire fall. It doesn't come with explosions. No dramatic soundtracks. It starts with silence. Emails that go unopened. Calls that go unreturned. Calendar invites that disappear without explanation. One click, one link, one shared folder at a time. I didn't do it out of vengeance. That's what I told myself at first. I did it because I couldn't stand the version of me she had created. The quiet man in the background. The family friend. The placeholder in photos, or worse, the man left out of the frame entirely. And if Lindsay wanted to build a second life on lies, I decided to show the world exactly what that life looked like. I started with the folder. The one I had curated late at night, long after she was gone. It had everything, a selection of the synced photos, nothing explicit, just enough to erase plausible deniability, transcripts of the audio clips, a redacted version of her message thread with Chad, and a timeline of events, hotel stays, fake business trips, overlapping bookings, the team retreats that somehow always landed within 5 miles of a boutique suite. I didn't add commentary. I didn't need to. The truth unadorned is its own poison. The first recipient was her agent. I used a burner email, stripped the metadata, and attached a subject line she wouldn't ignore in case your client hasn't been honest with you. I didn't wait for a response. Next came the media list. A curated batch of journalists, bloggers, publicists, people I knew from the periphery of Lindsay's world. Names I'd heard dropped at dinner, tagged in captions, thanked in footnotes. I sent the same package, slightly tailored, this time under the subject line, "You may want to reconsider your association." I wasn't expecting a frenzy. These people got pitched dirt every day. But this wasn't a rumor. It was verified, time-stamped, branded with her own voice. Then I sent a copy to her employer, an anonymous upload through their ethics complaint portal. They had one of those vague code of conduct blurbs on their website about public image, integrity, brand risk. I quoted it directly. I even uploaded the receipt from the sunset palms, the same one she tried to deny. I waited, and the fallout began slowly, then all at once. 2 days later, her Media Mondays panel appearance vanished from the network's event site. The banner that once showed her smiling face now featured someone else, one of the more established anchors. Then the podcast sponsorships started pulling out. I watched it in real time, first the organic supplement company, then a wellness brand, then a luxury travel firm. I recognized each one. I had watched her rehearse their names in our bathroom mirror. Heard her say things like, "This one could be a game changer." Gone. Her verified Instagram account lost nearly 15,000 followers in a weekend. Comments started piling up. Not mean ones, just pointed. Curious. Where's Chad? Didn't you say you were single on your last live? Why are you deleting comments? And she did delete them. In waves. But the more she scrubbed, the faster they came back. Screensh * TS circulated. Threads popped up in industry circles. Reddit threads. Blog posts. She stopped posting entirely within a week. Then I heard from a mutual friend, a producer Lindsay had once mentored, who texted me unprompted, "Hey, I just saw everything. I'm sorry, man. You didn't deserve that." I replied, "Thanks," and left it at that. Even her sister, who used to call me Bran like we were family, unfollowed her on every platform. I knew because I checked. Not out of pettiness. Just curiosity. I wanted to know if anyone else was seeing the same picture I had stared at in secret for too long. Apparently, they were. One night, I got a call from an unlisted number. I let it ring. Then another. And another. All went to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. Instead, she emailed me. Just a subject line, "Why are you doing this?" No body. Just that. I didn't reply. Because here's the truth, I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't confronted her in public. I hadn't outed her in front of friends or family. I had just told the truth. And the truth, once out, doesn't go back in the bottle. Still, there was a strange numbness in it all. Watching her lose what she'd worked for wasn't satisfying. It didn't fix anything. It didn't bring back the years I had spent backing her dreams, covering her share of rent while she interned, making late-night runs for printer paper when she had a pitch due at 7 a.m. But it did give me clarity. The woman I had loved was a projection. Something she rehearsed, curated, broadcasted. The real Lindsay, the one who giggled when she called me predictable, the one who said I was too soft to notice, that woman had now been exposed to the same audience she had once dazzled. And without the lights, she didn't shine. A week later, her agent dropped her. I saw the announcement in a now-deleted tweet from the agency. No formal statement. Just her name removed from their roster. I didn't cheer. I didn't drink. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I went for a walk. Pasadena was quiet that evening. Golden hour washed over the streets like honey. Families walked dogs. Kids rode bikes. I passed the little bookstore we used to visit on Sundays, where she once read aloud from a screenplay draft she never finished. It was still there. The world was still spinning. It just no longer revolved around her. And neither did I. When the envelope arrived by courier, I was sitting at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching a squirrel pick apart our patio flower bed. Lindsay's name was printed neatly across the top. Her lawyer's address was in the corner. She had signed. No protest. No note. No demands. Just her signature under every clause. No alimony. No claim to assets. No stake in my business or the house. It was like she wanted to vanish cleanly. Like a ghost too embarrassed to haunt what she ruined. I expected a fight. But there was none. Maybe she'd already lost too much. Or maybe she knew dragging this out would only lead to more truth surfacing. I didn't feel victory. I felt vacancy. Like the last scene of a play when the lights dim, and the audience has already started putting on their coats. I moved to Boise 3 months later. It was quieter, slower, the kind of place where no one recognized me, and no one had ever heard of Lindsay's show. I bought a small house by the lake and opened a cafe. A clean, modern space with big windows, good beans, and books people could borrow without asking. Every morning, I brewed the first pot before sunrise. One afternoon, a local lifestyle magazine ran a feature on new faces of Boise. They photographed me behind the cafe bar. Standing beside me was Claire, an architect I'd met through a mutual friend. Sharp, kind, grounded. Someone Lindsay once mocked at a dinner party for lacking ambition. The article went modestly viral.